Have you ever really stopped to think about what's going on inside your head? You know, when you feel that sudden jolt of fear or that deep, powerful drive to go after a goal? Well, today, we're taking a tour of your brain's inner world. We're going to look at the very structures that shape how you think, how you feel, and what you do every single day. So let's start with a really popular idea you've probably heard before, the one that says you have like 3 different brains all packed into one head. You know, a primal reptilian brain for all your instincts, a mammal brain for all your feelings, and then the modern human brain for all that rational thought. It's a pretty neat story, right? But is it the whole story? Yeah, that idea is called the Triune brain hypothesis. And look, it's a helpful starting point, a simple map. But what we know now from modern neuroscience tells a much more interesting and, honestly, a much cooler story. The truth is, your brain isn't 3 separate computers stacked on top of each other. It's one single, deeply interconnected network where what you feel and what you think are in a constant conversation. Today, we're going to explore that network from the bottom up. Okay, our journey starts at the very base of the brain, in the oldest, most fundamental part of you, the brainstem. The best way to think about this is your autopilot system. It's the non-negotiable, absolutely essential hardware that just keeps you alive. It's kind of wild when you think about it. So many life or death jobs are handled right here, and you never ever have to think about them. The medulla, that's controlling your heartbeat, your breathing. The pons is like a critical relay station that helps manage your sleep. And the midbrain helps process what you see and hear. This is the stuff that connects your brain to your body and just runs all those background programs you absolutely cannot live without. All right, moving up from that foundation, we get to the brain's central relay stations. So if the brainstem is the power plant keeping the lights on, these next parts are like the main switchboards and the air traffic control towers, basically directing the massive flow of information coming in and out. First up is the thalamus, and this thing is basically the grand central station for your senses. Seriously, with one interesting exception, smell. Pretty much every single piece of sensory information, everything you see, hear, and feel, has to pass through the thalamus before it gets sent on to the cortex for you to actually make sense of it. It's the gatekeeper of your reality. And nestled right below the thalamus is the hypothalamus. You can think of this as your body's own internal smart thermostat. Its main gig is maintaining homeostasis, keeping your whole internal world in a state of balance. It's what regulates your body temp, tells you you're hungry or thirsty, and manages your sleep. But it has another huge job. It is the command center for your body's stress response. And this is where you really start to see how everything is connected. When your brain senses some kind of threat, the hypothalamus kicks off this powerful chemical chain reaction. It's called the HPA axis. Now, that stands for the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and it's the core system that gets your entire body ready to deal with a challenge. So this whole cascade happens in 3 super fast steps. It's like dominoes falling. Step 1, the hypothalamus releases a hormone called CRF. Step 2, the pituitary gland gets that message and immediately fires off its hormone, ACTH. And step 3, ACTH zips down to the adrenal glands and boom, they release the famous stress hormone, cortisol, which then floods your system to get you ready for action. And that whole stress response, it brings us right into the limbic system. This is a collection of structures that we usually link with our emotions, our memories, and our motivations. This is where raw information gets its emotional flavor, which in turn shapes what we decide to do next. Right at the heart of all that emotional processing is the amygdala. This is your brain's threat detector, its super sensitive smoke alarm. It is constantly scanning your environment and your internal state for anything that might be dangerous or just really important. And when it spots a potential threat, what do you think it does? It signals the hypothalamus to flip the switch on that HPA stress axis. The amygdala is the gas pedal for your stress response. Okay, now let's talk about what gets you going. Motivation. You probably heard of a part of the brain called the nucleus accumbens, and it almost always gets mislabeled as the pleasure center. But as the neuroscientist Stan Floresco puts it so well, that's just way too simple. Its real job is so much more complex and frankly a lot more interesting. A much, much better way to think of the nucleus accumbens, or NAC, is as the action selection hub. See, it doesn't just register pleasure, it's an integrator. It pulls in a ton of information to help you decide what to do next. It influences the energy and the direction of your behavior, pushing you towards a goal, whether that goal is getting food, staying safe, or learning something new.
So, how in the world does it make these decisions? Well, the knack doesn't work alone, not even close. It's like a servant to many masters, constantly getting all these competing signals and suggestions from other really powerful parts of the brain. Its whole job is to listen to all of that advice and then help guide your next move. So who are these masters? Well, there are three major players giving it input. First, you've got the hippocampus, which provides that crucial context. It's asking, where are we and what's happened here before? Second, the amygdala chimes in with the emotional value. Is this thing good for me, bad for me? Is it scary? Is it rewarding? And third, the prefrontal cortex gives that executive input. What's our long-term plan here, and does this action actually make sense? The NAC has to weigh all of that to make a call.
And that brings us to one of those key masters we just mentioned, the hippocampus. Now, it's famous for its huge role in creating memories, but it also has a second, equally critical job in regulating our emotions.
You see, the hippocampus isn't just one big blob. It's got two different parts with two very different jobs. The top part, the dorsal side, is mostly focused on the outside world. It processes sights and sounds, it helps you build maps of your environment, it helps you learn stuff. But the bottom part, the ventral side, that's focused on your internal world. It's processing signals from inside your body, and it plays a huge role in how you experience stress and emotion.
So just to recap its main roles, the hippocampus is absolutely critical for turning short-term experiences into long-term memories. For spatial navigation, it's your brain's internal GPS, and for regulating your body's stress response. And that last part is where its partnership with the amygdala is just so important.
So, if the amygdala is the gas pedal for stress, the hippocampus is the brake. It's the counterbalance. When all that cortisol is circulating through your system, it gets back up to the brain and binds to receptors in the hippocampus. This sends a powerful negative feedback signal back to the hypothalamus, which basically says, okay, message received. The threat is passing, we can turn off the alarm now. It is the critical off switch for that HPA axis, bringing your body back into balance.
And this brings us to our final and maybe the most important point of this whole tour. After looking at all these individual parts, the biggest takeaway is this. They don't work alone. They can't. They form one single, deeply integrated system. What modern neuroscience shows us loud and clear is that there are no purely emotional parts of the brain or purely cognitive parts of the brain. That's a myth. Emotion and cognition are fundamentally intertwined. Your so-called thinking parts and feeling parts are always talking to each other, constantly shaping one another to produce every single thought, feeling, and action you have.
I mean, just think about the elegant little loop we just walked through. The amygdala acts as the alarm, turning that stress response on. The hippocampus acts as the regulator, turning that stress response off. And both of them are sending critical intelligence reports down to the nucleus accumbens, helping it decide what to do next. It is a constant dynamic dance.
So we'll leave you with this question. Knowing that your brain isn't some ancient battlefield where instinct, emotion, and reason are at war, but that it's actually one deeply connected conversation between all its parts, how does that change the way you see yourself? What does it mean to look at your feelings and your actions not as separate forces fighting for control, but as the integrated, intelligent output of this one incredible network?